Port of Los Angeles and the Port of Long Beach form the largest port complex in the Western Hemisphere. Together, they handle over 9 million shipping containers annually, representing approximately 40% of all cargo entering the United States by sea. The volume and complexity of operations create opportunities for concealment that trafficking organizations have exploited systematically for decades. The maritime shipping system operates on speed and efficiency. Container ships arriving from international ports need to be unloaded quickly to minimize costly delays. Thousands of containers move through the terminals daily, transferred from ships to trucks or trains for distribution across the country. The pressure to maintain rapid throughput makes comprehensive inspection of every container logistically impossible. Customs and Border Protection inspects approximately 3% of containers using a combination of radiation detection, X-ray scanning, and physical examination. The selection process relies on risk assessment algorithms that flag containers based on shipping patterns, declared contents, and intelligence about suspected trafficking routes. The vast majority of containers pass through inspection points with only documentary review. This system works for legitimate commerce, but creates vulnerability to smuggling operations. Traffickers who understand the inspection criteria can design shipments that avoid detection triggers while concealing drugs among legal cargo. Success requires corrupting specific personnel who can ensure targeted containers bypass thorough examination. The investigation began when a CBP data analyst noticed irregularities in inspection records at the Port of Long Beach. Certain cargo handling companies showed unusually low rates of secondary inspection referrals for containers arriving from high-risk source countries. The pattern suggested someone was manipulating the inspection process to protect specific shipments. The analyst examined container manifests for shipments processed by the flagged companies. Most declared contents were legitimate commodities, agricultural products, manufactured goods, and industrial materials from South America and Central America. But weight discrepancies appeared in some manifests. Containers declared as carrying lightweight goods showed weights consistent with denser cargo. DEA was brought into the investigation because the source countries and weight anomalies suggested cocaine smuggling. Maritime containers had been used for decades to move cocaine from Colombia and other South American production centers to markets in North America and Europe. The method provided concealment for large quantities that would be impractical to smuggle through other routes. Investigators identified 3 cargo handling companies operating at terminals in Long Beach and Los Angeles that showed suspicious patterns. These companies managed container transfer from ships to trucks, providing services that position them to control which containers receive detailed inspection. If personnel at these companies were compromised, they could facilitate smuggling by ensuring drug-laden containers avoided scrutiny. Surveillance operations began in April. Undercover agents observed operations at the terminals where the suspect companies worked. The activity appeared normal during most hours. Containers were unloaded from ships using massive cranes. They were stacked in holding areas or loaded directly onto trucks for transport. The process moved with industrial efficiency that characterized modern port operations, but certain containers received different handling. Specific units were separated from normal traffic flow and moved to isolated areas of the terminal. These containers would sit for several hours before being loaded onto trucks that arrived during off-peak hours. The segregation suggested the containers required special handling that wasn't part of standard operations. Financial investigators analyzed bank records for employees at the cargo handling companies. Several workers showed income levels that exceeded their documented wages by substantial margins. A crane operator earned $48,000 annually according to employment records, but had deposited over $90,000 in his bank account during the previous year. Similar discrepancies appeared for other terminal workers. The additional income came from sources that couldn't be clearly documented. Some workers claimed it represented winnings from gambling or gifts from relatives. Others stated it was compensation for freelance work performed outside their regular employment. The explanations were plausible individually, but suspicious when pattern analysis showed multiple workers at the same companies reporting similar unexplained income. Electronic surveillance of suspected workers revealed communications using coded language to discuss container movements. Messages would reference sports events or family gatherings, but included details that appeared to convey information about specific shipments. A text saying, "Cousin's birthday party Tuesday, blue cake, gate 7, translated to instructions about handling a container on Tuesday at a specific terminal gate. DEA coordinated with CBP to deploy enhanced inspection resources on containers the surveillance suggested were protected by corrupted workers. X-ray scanning of these units revealed anomalies consistent with concealed compartments built into cargo loads. Physical inspection of selected containers confirmed the presence of cocaine hidden within legitimate shipments. The concealment methods were sophisticated. In one container ostensibly carrying ceramic tiles from Ecuador, cocaine was pressed into tile-shaped blocks and stacked among genuine tiles. The drugs were packaged to match the weight and appearance of legitimate product, making detection through casual inspection nearly impossible. Only detailed examination or chemical testing would identify the cocaine. Another container declared as carrying coffee beans from Colombia included bags filled with a mixture of actual coffee and cocaine powder. The coffee scent masked drug odors that might trigger detection by canine units. The weight matched what a cocaine shipment should weigh. The packaging appeared authentic. Without knowing which bags to test, inspectors would likely clear the container as legitimate cargo. The investigation revealed that the smuggling operation was managed by a Colombian trafficking organization working with Mexican cartels to distribute cocaine in the United States. The Colombian group produced the drugs and arranged maritime transport. The Mexican cartels handled distribution once containers reached U.S. ports. The corrupted port workers ensured the containers moved through inspection without detection. The scale of the operation became apparent as investigators analyzed shipping records over multiple years. During a 4-year period, the corrupted workers had facilitated passage of approximately 300 containers carrying concealed cocaine. Not every container processed by these workers contained drugs, but the protected shipments represented a consistent flow of narcotics through the port system. Based on weight analysis and seized samples, investigators estimated each container carried between 1,000 and 3,000 pounds of cocaine. Total volume moved through the operation exceeded 500,000 pounds, with a wholesale value approaching $10 billion. The street value after distribution and cutting would be several times higher. The corrupted port workers had been recruited through different methods. Some were approached by individuals claiming to represent import-export businesses seeking help with expedited cargo handling. Initial requests were for legitimate services with premium compensation. Once workers accepted payments and provided assistance, the requests evolved to include containers that might contain contraband. Other workers were recruited through family or social connections to individuals involved in trafficking organizations. The recruitment approach was gradual, establishing trust and financial dependency before revealing the full nature of what was being asked. By the time workers understood they were facilitating drug smuggling, they had already accepted substantial payments and become complicit. The payment structure was designed to maintain operational security while ensuring worker loyalty. Corrupted employees received between $3,000 and $8,000 per container they protected from inspection. Payments were structured as cash delivered during non-work hours or deposited into accounts in ways that appeared to be legitimate income from other sources. The operation required coordination across multiple roles within the port system. Crane operators needed to be corrupted to ensure drug containers were moved to designated areas. Inspection coordinators needed to be compromised to prevent secondary examination. Trucking dispatch personnel needed to be controlled to ensure the right trucks arrived to collect protected containers. The network involved approximately 20 individuals across different positions. Security for the operation included monitoring law enforcement activity at the ports. Workers were instructed to report unusual inspection patterns or increased CBP presence that might indicate investigations. If enforcement activity increased, drug shipments would be delayed until conditions returned to normal. The flexibility reduced detection risk, but also limited throughput during high alert periods. The trafficking organization maintained backup routes through other West Coast ports, including Oakland, Seattle, and San Diego. If operations at Los Angeles or Long Beach became too risky, shipments could be diverted to alternative entry points. This redundancy ensured continued drug flow even if specific routes were compromised. The investigation team developed plans for simultaneous enforcement action at both ports. If arrests occurred at one location while the other remained operational, the organization would shift operations and potentially destroy evidence. Coordination between CBP, DEA, FBI, and local port police was essential to execute synchronized raids. Federal prosecutors obtained warrants for the cargo handling company's facilities, the homes of corrupted workers, and containers identified through surveillance as likely containing drugs. The warrants authorized searches and arrests designed to dismantle the entire operation simultaneously. The coordinated operations occurred on a Thursday morning in September. Federal agents executed search warrants at 3 cargo handling company offices and arrested corrupted workers at their homes before shift changes. At the port terminals, CBP officers secured containers flagged for examination and prevented their removal before inspection. The searches uncovered extensive evidence of the smuggling operation. Computer records at the cargo handling companies included coded spreadsheets tracking protected containers and payments to workers. Communications devices seized from workers' homes contained messages coordinating container movements and discussing payments. Financial records documented unexplained income deposits consistent with smuggling proceeds. Physical inspection of containers identified through the investigation yielded massive seizures. 17 containers sitting at terminals or recently delivered to warehouses were found to contain concealed cocaine. The total seizure exceeded 38,000 pounds, with a street value approaching $1 billion. The volume represented one of the largest single cocaine seizures in U.S. history. 64 individuals were arrested across the operation. 23 were port workers who had facilitated smuggling through their positions at cargo handling companies. 18 were trucking company employees who transported containers from ports to distribution facilities. 12 were warehouse workers who unpacked containers and separated drugs from legitimate cargo. 11 were organizational coordinators who managed the smuggling network. The arrests included 3 CBP officers who had accepted payments to manipulate inspection processes. These individuals held positions that gave them authority to determine which containers received secondary examination. Their corruption represented a critical vulnerability that had allowed the operation to function for years without significant interdiction. The prosecution phase revealed organizational details about how the maritime smuggling network operated. Cooperating defendants described how containers were prepared in Colombia, shipped to the United States with falsified documentation, and processed through corrupted port infrastructure. Their testimony documented the sophistication and scale of the operation. The financial investigation traced money flows through the network. Traffickers had invested approximately $20 million annually in port corruption payments, shipping costs, and operational expenses. This investment generated revenue exceeding $2 billion per year, creating profit margins that justified the substantial costs. The containers themselves represented carefully crafted deception. Each required advanced planning to match declared contents with actual cargo in ways that would pass documentary inspection. False manifests were prepared by corrupted customs brokers who understood what information would clear automated risk assessment systems. The legitimate cargo mixed with drugs was often purchased specifically to provide cover. Traffickers would buy actual coffee, tile, or other products and ship them alongside cocaine to create plausible shipments. This investment in cover cargo added costs but significantly reduced detection risks by making containers appear completely legitimate. Environmental and health impacts of the smuggling operation became apparent during the seizure process. Some containers had been fumigated or treated with chemicals to mask drug odors, creating hazardous conditions for workers who handled them. Other containers included temperature control systems that had failed, causing spoilage of legitimate perishable cargo mixed with drugs. The sentencing phase demonstrated severe consequences for maritime smuggling operations. Port workers who facilitated drug passage received sentences ranging from 8 to 15 years. The corrupted CBP officers received enhanced sentences of 20 to 25 years due to their positions of trust. Organizational coordinators faced life sentences for operating continuing criminal enterprises. The disruption of the smuggling network created immediate impacts on cocaine availability in western U.S. markets. Cities supplied through the California port system experienced temporary shortages as alternative supply routes proved less efficient. Prices increased by 15 to 20% in affected markets during the months following the seizures. The trafficking organizations adapted by shifting more volume through Mexican border crossings and increasing use of maritime routes through ports in other states. The total cocaine flow into the United States eventually returned to previous levels, but at higher costs and operational complexity than the compromised port system had provided. CBP implemented enhanced security measures at both ports following the investigation. Random integrity testing was increased for personnel in positions vulnerable to corruption. Electronic monitoring of cargo movement patterns was enhanced to detect anomalies suggesting protected shipments. Coordination with international partners improved information sharing about high-risk containers before they arrived. The shipping industry responded with voluntary security enhancements. Some cargo lines implemented GPS tracking for containers from origin to destination, creating audit trails that made unauthorized diversions more difficult. Others enhanced documentation requirements to make falsification harder. The industry recognized that maritime smuggling damaged their reputation and operational efficiency. Insurance companies adjusted policies for cargo transported through West Coast ports. Enhanced security requirements and increased premiums reflected the demonstrated risks of trafficking exploitation. Legitimate shippers absorbed these costs, creating economic impacts beyond the trafficking organizations that had caused the problems. The communities surrounding the ports experienced complex effects from the investigation. Some residents expressed relief that criminal corruption had been exposed and eliminated. Others worried about job security as cargo handling companies faced investigation and potential penalties. The economic importance of port operations made the community dependent on industries that had been infiltrated by criminal organizations. 3 years after the raids, 2 of the 3 cargo handling companies had been sold to new ownership after pleading guilty to conspiracy charges. The companies paid substantial fines and implemented compliance programs to prevent future corruption. The third company ceased operations entirely, unable to survive the reputational damage and legal costs. The port terminals where the smuggling occurred implemented enhanced worker screening and background investigation processes. Random drug testing was expanded beyond safety-sensitive positions to include workers in roles vulnerable to corruption. Anonymous reporting systems were established for employees to report suspected criminal activity without fear of retaliation. Intelligence assessments concluded that the smuggling operation had represented a mature trafficking infrastructure that took years to develop and establish. The Colombian and Mexican organizations had invested substantial resources in recruiting and managing corrupted workers. The network's destruction required them to rebuild relationships and processes, creating temporary disruption but not permanent elimination of port-based smuggling. The fundamental challenge remained unchanged. The volume of legitimate commerce flowing through major ports made comprehensive inspection impossible without paralyzing international trade. The small percentage of containers that could be thoroughly examined created opportunities for sophisticated smuggling operations that avoided detection triggers while concealing massive drug quantities. The investigation demonstrated that corruption was the critical enabler. Without workers willing to manipulate inspection processes, the smuggling operation couldn't function reliably. The trafficking organizations understood this and were willing to invest millions in corruption payments because the returns justified the costs. The lesson for law enforcement was that disrupting port-based smuggling required targeting both the traffickers and the corrupted infrastructure that facilitated their operations. Seizures and arrests were important, but temporary impacts unless the underlying corruption was addressed. Building integrity into port operations created sustainable security improvements beyond individual enforcement actions. 5 years after the investigation, cocaine smuggling through West Coast ports continued, but at reduced levels compared to the peak of the corrupted operation. New security measures and enhanced enforcement had increased operational risks and costs for trafficking organizations. The massive volumes that once moved through compromised infrastructure were now distributed across multiple routes and methods. The seized containers had been processed through evidence protocols and eventually released or destroyed. The legitimate cargo mixed with drugs was separated and evaluated for possible return to owners who had been unaware their shipments were being exploited. Most cargo was forfeited as proceeds or instruments of drug trafficking regardless of owner knowledge. The financial proceeds from the smuggling operation were traced through multiple countries and banking systems. Asset seizure and forfeiture actions recovered approximately $80 million from accounts connected to the network. The recovered funds were allocated to law enforcement agencies, victim compensation, and drug treatment programs. The Colombian trafficking organization that managed the maritime smuggling rebuilt portions of their network using different ports and different methods. They remained a significant cocaine supplier, but never regained the efficiency and volume they had achieved through the corrupted California port infrastructure. The disruption had lasting impacts on their operational capacity. The Mexican cartels that received and distributed cocaine from the port system diversified their supply chain to reduce dependency on maritime routes. They increased production of synthetic drugs, including methamphetamine and fentanyl, that could be manufactured closer to markets. The shift reflected adaptation to enforcement pressure that had made cocaine smuggling more difficult and expensive. The port smuggling case became a training example for law enforcement agencies worldwide. The methods used to detect corruption through data analysis, the coordination required to dismantle networked operations, and the importance of addressing infrastructure vulnerabilities became lessons applied to other investigations.